Greetings and welcome to the Richard Dolan Show, where every week we fight the good fight. I'm very pleased to have a fascinating guest for this week's program. And this is Dr. Erling Strand, who has managed, I guess we could say, Project Hessdalen for many years. And for those of you who do not know or not aware, Hessdalen, Norway, has been the site of one of, if not the longest running ongoing UFO phenomenon in the modern times that we know of. It's very interesting. We get this phenomenon, I think, getting our attention first in the 1980s. Very odd light phenomena, sometimes more than a light phenomena, if I understand this correctly, which has been studied scientifically now for a very long while. And the thing is, Hessdalen is very remote. And I don't believe that there are any agreed upon explanations for what has been going on there. So we've got Erling Strand here to discuss it. And Dr. Strand, it is a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Yes, so I guess I would first ask you, well, may I show a map? I just would like people to get an idea of where we are talking about. So this is a map of Europe. Obviously, there's Norway at the top and Hessdalen in the red. And it's about 200 miles north of Oslo, I believe. And
yeah, a little bit more, but
a little bit more.
not so far away.
I mean, I've looked at Norwegian geography, and let me just say, correct me if I'm wrong. When you get up there, it's like a land of infinite lakes. It doesn't seem to be an easy place to get around. And Hessdalen always struck me as a very remote area. I wasn't aware of anything really going on in that region. I think the village has something like 100 or 200 residents, something very small like that. And it's been like this for very many years. And yet there's this very bizarre activity that just constantly seems to be happening there. So I'll leave it at that. And we know you have been running the scientific investigation of what's happening there for many, many years. What can you say about this? What brings your fascination to this?
Well, I would like to start with when it became known for other people than the inhabitants. You mentioned only 100 inhabitants in that small valley, about only, I think it's 10 miles long. So it's a small Norwegian valley, and with few inhabitants, though. It started in December 1981 when people up there, this is in a mountainous area. You have the river in the middle of the valley and a mountain on each side. And the people up there, they started to see a bright light on the hillside on one of the mountains. And it stand still for a long time, and it was seen nearly every day, not on the same location, but in the same hillside. And on one specific day, while they was looking at it, they saw it started to move out of this hillside and follow the valley down in towards the north. And then they started to wonder, what could that be? That was one of the first one, not the first one, but one of the first one. And after that, it started to show up many times. It could be an intensity of up to 20 observations a week. We started to write down the stories, and at the most, in the beginning of the 80s, it was up to 20 observations a week. Sometimes it could be near the houses of those living there. One story is that the one inhabitant woke up in the middle of the night because it was so bright inside the house. And he went to the window wondering what could that be, so bright light into the house. And he saw this big, huge, bright light moving crossing these windows. And you remember, this is far out in the countryside. And no, not street like that. There's some houses though for those totally 100 inhabitants.
Mhm.
So the stories continued to run in. The people talked about it. And suddenly, some journalists in the nearby town heard about it
Mhm.
and started to write an article. And then it, due to the high activity, um, they wrote that it was a big chance if anyone went up to this valley and wanted to see it for themselves, it was a big chance. So people started to go up in the valley in the nighttime, though, when it's dark outside, to look for it themselves. And many
Mhm.
people did see it for themselves. So that I was one of those many people who went up there. The newspaper started the big writing in the beginning of 1982 in the
Mhm.
wintertime. It was mostly seen in the wintertime due to it's so far north, so it's more dark in the day and nights during the winter. In the summertime, is the sun is up nearly the whole night, so not far away from it. So it's more difficult to see lights at that conditions.
Yes.
So people started to go up there, and many people saw it for themselves. And I and some friends of mine, uh, we decided to, why don't we go up there to have a look, uh, have a weekend up there, and see if we could see it for
You were
ourselves.
dealing with very cold weather through many nights, I think. So were you
Yes.
you were one of the early people engaged in basically camping out there? Is that accurate? Where you were just there for an extended period of time to try to observe and record things?
Yeah, were up there for the first time in September, 25th of September, 1982, and brought some tent with us. The snow hadn't arrived yet, so but it was close to freezing,
Yes.
so it was cold. But I don't remember that. It's my sighting, which I really remember, because when we went up there, a small group, we decided to split the group in so we can stay on three different locations up on mountain, and we decided to stay there during the night and be or very light. I
Mhm.
didn't believe I would be so lucky that I would see this bright light for my first visit,
I see.
but I did, and it made a big impression on me. It was so strong in intensity. If you can imagine, I was standing out in the mountainside, uh, I and a friend, and we was looking. It's dark, and this light was so intense, and
Mhm.
it showed up down you one of the groups was more up on the higher mountain, and they actually saw down on the light, down to the valley, so they were above this light. This light moved around, stopped, was standing still for several minutes, moved again, and continued for this for nearly 2 hours. But when it was moving, sometimes it shot a spotlight down on the ground and also up in the air. On my position, I saw the spotlight up in the air, but the other group who was up on this higher mountain could see, and also closer to the phenomena, they saw it also shooting a spotlight on the down to it.
Well, that's
And
interesting. Well, I
yes,
want you to continue, but a lot of times when we hear about this phenomenon, I know that there are attempts to explain this as some naturalistic phenomena, some kind of light, maybe like ball lightning. I don't know what explanations people have, but if you're talking about a spotlight, that certainly sounds technological to me, right? And it sounds intelligent. Did this thing move in a way that struck you as intelligent?
um, we have so many different descriptions and so many different sightings. And of course, very few, I will say very few of them where you can put this word intelligent onto it.
Very
Only
few.
very few.
Okay.
Because, well, that's a difficult question as well. So, but what we think of as an intelligent behavior is, I will not say that
Okay.
it's very few, in fact.
Okay.
But of course, the one I mentioned just now with the spotlight could indicate some of, and we have some few stories as well.
I see. Well, I should let you continue. How did that sighting end up having any other interesting elements to it, or anything else
Uh,
about it?
Now it just disappeared after 2 hours after moving around there. And what's interesting, I think, when it was close to the ground, it moved also up and down a little bit. It illuminated the ground beneath it. So it was a strong light. Uh, and when you have a strong light lasting for close to 2 hours at this time, you can think of where does all this power come from? If you
Okay.
if you compare with a strong light, you know that this light, a street light or whatever, that must have some kind of power to it. But
Indeed.
this is just a light in the air.
Was there any sound coming out of the light or the object?
No, there was no
No.
sound, nothing at all. And so, well, anyway, that I remember that, that happening very well. Uh, at that time, I was working as a researcher, and when I went back to Oslo, where I was living after the weekend, I had to discuss that with my research fellows.
Mhm.
And this was back in 1982, and we call it UFO. And if
Mhm.
you talked about UFO on that that time, back in 1982, you should be careful. They said that you should be you should not involve yourself in
Right.
doing research on this phenomena, because no scientist do research on UFO. So,
On the other
well,
hand, you just saw probably the most fascinating thing of your life up to that point, I would assume. And so I have to think you were incredibly curious about it.
yes,
I would think.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes. I was very curious, and also when I heard that no one do any research on that, that made me even more curious to try to do something, to try
Yes.
to find out. So,
So how did this
we,
progress? I know that at some point in the early 1980s, the American UFO researcher J. Allen Hynek got a little bit involved in Hessdalen. He had something to say about it, I believe.
yes, we started this project 1983 in the summer,
Mhm.
and during the autumn in 1983, we planned the field work to bring instruments out in the field and tried to do some measurements of the phenomena when it was still there. During my preparation, or our preparation for this fieldwork, I talked with the scientists from both the universities and research facilities, and also the military, which was very interested. And we did our fieldwork in the winter of 1984, in January and part of February, and managed to get a lot of scientific data, which I wrote a report. And of course, we informed around the world wherever we could about this. And also Heineck got to know it because we informed everywhere. We wanted to have people engaged to help us to find a solution.
Indeed.
So, well, actually, the year after, we, due to the fact that we managed to get so many results during our campaign fieldwork, we decided to do another fieldwork the year after. That was in the winter of 1985. And then Heineck did come all the way from the States to visit us up in this small valley, cold valley, at that time, winter. So he was with us some days. So that was very nice that he took his tour.
He was it was not long before he passed away. He was quite elderly at that point. So I thought it was quite interesting that he found the case interesting enough. I personally think that the Hessdalen lights is utterly fascinating. But the fact that you said it only seems sometimes intelligent, usually it doesn't seem to act that way, makes me wonder. And by the way, we could show some images and clips, but before that, what do you personally think that you are dealing with? Do you have any theories about what this long-standing phenomenon is?
It's very difficult to find one theory which suits all the different descriptions, the different measurements. So actually we have thought of, could there be several different things up there? Because we have, well, during our research on this and mapping of the different types of phenomena, which are quite different, and it's difficult to find one solution. So I say that the more data I get, the more mysterious it becomes.
Oh, that's the kind of phenomenon I hate. I would like it to be more understandable with the more data, but Hessdalen is very interesting. You were, I'll have a link here to your website with a lot of the images, and I wish actually that I had taken a few more, but can I show some of the?
Yep, please.
Well, actually, is there something that you'd like to start with? I pulled a few off of your website, and I don't even know if I have. Oh, this is actually, let me go back to the beginning here. Sorry, this is an image. Maybe we could show this video clip. This was actually sent.
Yeah, this was.
Can you describe this? This is a still from a
This
video.
is. We have an automatic station up there, which record anything what's happening in the nighttime or in the light, though. And this one is from interesting picture and with the video, though, from actually this May 2022. The system is that we have this automatic station, the blue box as we call it, with the camera pointing in one direction all the time, connected to software, a computer and software, which analyze the pictures from the video all the time.
Yes.
And whenever there is something which the software think is interesting, it records and takes a picture. So this is one of those.
I
You
have
can show
the
it.
clip here, which let me
Yeah.
show this. I have this slow down to 25% because it appears so very quickly. Let me run this. And for people watching, so look in the top right part of the image, and this is at 25% speed. Here we go. There it goes. I'm going to back up and show it again.
You
This
saw
is
one in up in the sky and one
there it is.
below the horizon. Yeah.
Oh, I'll start over. And this is again at very slow speed.
Yeah. There
Yes, I
you
saw it
saw
at the
one
bottom.
also up there, and
Let's see if I
also
can. I'm going to try to
on the
pause it.
bottom.
Let's see here. Not yet. There, I paused it on the bottom one.
Yeah. Yes.
It was on the top one, and then there's the bottom one right down there.
Yes.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Could that just be a lens effect or a photographic effect of some sort? I don't really know.
Not that one, because then you have to have a strong light source which reflects and make this light, But at that time there was not sun up or not anything, so it's not lens flare. And it's happened on one frame of the video.
Yeah, it was very, very strange. I have to agree. And I have another video clip here, which I'm going to move this to normal speed. This is one you and I discussed a moment ago. It's from 1999. And maybe I'll play this at a slightly slower speed, maybe 50% speed. It's an object. Well, let me just show here.
Yeah.
Is it okay if we look at this one here? So let me.
Yeah, you see it in the up in the sky.
There we go.
Below. Yeah, and it's moving.
It's at slow speed here, but
yeah, and suddenly, as if you study this perfect, a small light just beneath the big light moves up in the big light.
I paused it. Is this what you're talking about? There's something that.
Yes, it's around that. It's very close to the big light, so it's hard to see. But when we study original, we could see this small light. It turned out that this small light just shows up, just start when the big light is there, and move up to it. And that, we have more of those similar, which are.
That's a clip from your website, which again I have linked below here, so people will be able to go there. It's but yeah, these bizarre phenomenon, and the part of it is like, again, is there anything about Hessdalen itself that you would think would explain why there's this ongoing phenomenon that just keeps recurring there at that location?
We have asked ourselves that question many times, and we have thought of, could there be something in the ground in Hessdalen? Is it something unusual in the ground? So we have got geophysicists up there to do research on the ground up there, and it is an interesting geophysical area. It has a lot of minerals in the ground.
Okay.
It has a conducting layer in the ground. You have a magnetical or places where the Earth magnetic field is suddenly much stronger. And we have also had mapping of the electricity. We haven't an explanation how this light can turn on due to the fact that there is something specific in the ground, minerals and so on. So we cannot take that connection though, but we know that this thing is something which makes Hessdalen interesting.
Yes. And I guess I can assume you're not every day saying, it's aliens. I don't get the idea that this is your number one explanation, but is that part of what you wonder? Like a high level of intelligence that may be from this civilization or maybe a different civilization. Have you considered
Well,
that? You must have, I wonder.
yeah, um, we have stories uh, of people who claim they've seen alien.
See.
So that I've talked with the people myself,
Hmm.
and it's you can look at the person and you can feel they're telling what they've seen.
Hmm.
Though very little. We have, as I mentioned, many different types of lights and observation, not only lights. We have also observation during the daytime, where it's more like object type and so on, like a more standard UFO system. But during our research, we have focused mostly on the light type. First of all, it's more better chance to get some scientific data on that. You can bring a camera up and so on,
Hmm.
and have some other instruments running as well, which you can connect to the light. So the light phenomena is more easy to study than an object in the daytime, because you never know when it comes, and it isn't that many of it. It's very few compared with all the lights.
I
But
see.
although uh, it has happened, and is this object the same as this flashing light? Hard
Hmm.
to believe, hard to think of that as the same thing. So as I mentioned, we have been starting thinking of, could it be different kind of answer on what's going on up there?
Well, I'd like to hear some of the stories that you've collected, but I have a few other images from your site. Let me just show a few of them, if that's okay.
Yeah,
This is one we haven't even discussed this. I'll just run through the few that I have here. So there's
yeah.
obviously some kind of
I can go.
strange
I
light.
can if you. I can. I took that picture, and if
Uh-huh.
you want me to tell
Please.
a little bit, uh, this was not so far from Hessdalen. It was not actually in Hessdalen.
Okay.
We was driving from Røros, nearest town, about 40 kilometers away from Hessdalen, back to Hessdalen, and then we
Hmm.
saw a flashing light in the mountainside. In the beginning, we thought it was this was happening when we was driving, a flashing light. We thought it was some light from a house or whatever. We didn't notice it in the beginning, but then we suddenly saw it was moving upwards while it was blinking. So we took the car, brought the camera out, and took a
Hmm.
picture on, with some seconds exposure time. So it made a flash uh, about one every second. So
Uh-huh.
on this exposure, you can think about four flashes, about 4 seconds.
I see.
Uh, and it went up and started flashing all the way up.
Oh, so these lights ascended.
Yeah,
Is what you're saying.
moved. It was flashing while it was moving up the hillside, and it continued flashing on top of the hill.
Yeah, what could that be? I have no idea.
Yeah,
Let me move to the next one. I don't know what these are. They looked interesting to me, so I thought I would include them. Can you comment on this one?
yeah. What uh, the light in the middle? Uh,
Yes.
it's it. We are not sure. That could maybe be a lens flare. Uh,
Hmm.
so, but the reason why we have taken more pictures at the same
I
location,
see.
which doesn't show it. So in that sense, it's interesting. But I
Here-
think the most interesting thing, if you see up in the right corner, there's a blue, something blue.
I'm going to zoom in on that. Let me show you
Yeah, you do
this.
that. Yes, that's one. I think that's the
Right.
most interesting. And you see it from, if it has been moving towards from left to right, it do change a little bit behavior.
Yes, it
You see the
moves up a
intensity and
little bit.
some up and down, and suddenly it seems to be moving up and down suddenly after something. Could
Is
it
this
be
a
hitting a
long
tree or?
exposure? Do you have a long
Yep,
exposure on this? That's
30 second. 30
so
second.
we're seeing a bluish light in motion
Yep,
that apparently moves. It's moving left to right. It goes up, and then look at the kind of squiggly effect on the right side of it.
yep,
That's very
yes,
interesting.
yes. And we don't know how long time of the exposure time, which was 30 second, this happened. Uh, Maybe only very seconds, maybe, because we have this type of light is uh, what we have seen and before, and that type of light is normally blue or white, and they're lasting only very short time, very often less than 1 second. We have the blue light lasting up to a couple of seconds, but normally it's less than a second. And if that is that kind of light, which I would guess, then the whole thing here lasted for mostly some second.
Now, I mean, when was this photograph taken, by the way?
That was taken during a science camp back in 2004, I think.
I have a photograph from Hessdalen from 1984 that's almost identical. It's black and white. I wish I had put it in so I could show it easily, but I might be able to share it. Let me unshare this, and I'm going to see if I am able to share this quickly. Yeah, these are from my personal notes, but I pulled this up. Do you see this here?
Yep.
This is a photograph, I think it's from 1984.
During our first field work, which I mentioned we run in January and February, this was one of the pictures. I was present when this picture was taken.
Okay.
And we saw this light. We used a long exposure there as well. On back, we use a black and white film, so we don't have any color. But after the exposure time was finished, if you see, it was moving from left up to right, and then on the upper right, you see some oscillating, moving up and down, like.
It seems very similar to the other image. But I'll just
Yeah,
switch back to that.
yeah, that's correct. It's quite similar.
And here we are back in 1984.
Yeah, and this oscillating becomes so big, and suddenly it turned off.
Right. So that apparently seems to be at least somewhat of a consistent element of the phenomenon. This light that moves and oscillates somehow. It's very interesting.
Yes.
I don't know what that is. So what about the this is it's easy to see why you would stay with this for your life. Yes. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. If there are people who are very skeptical of the UFO or alien part of the phenomenon, what do you normally hear people saying? They'll have a geological explanation, perhaps? They talk about things like Earth lights. Does this come up as a potential explanation in the minds of colleagues that you speak to?
Yes, about the Earth light, which is quite interesting. because this is also something, suddenly a light which shows up very often, though, in connection with some kind of lightning weather type.
Hmm.
I went to a conference or symposium, what I call it, back in 1990, because the, could this light be a ball lightning? I wanted to talk with the world's most experts on ball lightning, and they normally gather every second year and had their
Okay.
symposium. So I got the opportunity to present what you had and bring pictures and the data and so on, and ask them directly if they thought this could be some kind of ball lightning. After a shorter discussion, it turned out it couldn't be. Uh, one, one main reason for this is not a ball lightning is what they told about ball lightning is that it's very often attract to something electrical, cable or wire in the air, for instance,
Okay.
or if it come close to the ground, etc. Very often stories of ball lightning, you can see the ball lightning is hitting the wire, electrical wire, and following this into the house, or the electrical power to the house, and can go into the house and do a lot of damage. Well, we had a long discussion, so it turned out it doesn't fit with ball lightning theories.
Mm.
There have been other type of natural explanation as well. Um, one of them, which may be maybe most interesting, is what we call cold plasma. You know, plasma is the third or fourth stage or anything, and normally
Hmm.
very high temperature.
Yes.
But this one is cold, and that's one theory. However,
Cool. Yeah.
if you have a plasma, you have some kind of energy who makes it plasma ball.
I'm not sure I ever
Where
heard of
does
cold plasma, to be honest with you. That's a new thing
uh,
for me. I thought plasma was
yes,
always very hot, but apparently
yes,
not.
that's normal. But there are
Uh,
some specific. If you search on the net, you will find some info about cold plasma. But
okay.
it's hard to believe that. Well, first of all, it will not fit it with all the different descriptions of the light. It may fit on some of the descriptions that exist, but not all,
Yeah.
and especially not the object type in the daytime. Uh, Also, I could mention we have split it in three different types. Um, One type is the small flashing. That's, well, not small, the strong flashes, but not big in size. Short duration, normally less than a second, very often blue or white. Uh, that is seen very often. That's the type which are mostly seen or mostly observed after we became aware of it, because they last a short time, so we didn't see it in the beginning. It was not, well, it was the cameras who started to see it, and then we become aware of short flashes exist. That's one type. The other type is a ball of light, normally yellow, can be smaller balls to it with other colors, but mostly the color is yellow. And the shape of it is very different from type to type. One
Hmm.
can be a ball of light, one can be oval shapes, but you can also have the shapes which are spectacular, I will say. But anyway, these lasting mostly several minutes and sometimes up to hours. That's one type.
Hmm.
Also, that's the second type. The
Yes.
third type is what we call the black object with several lights onto it. Uh, where we have some pictures where we have several lights and onto something. And when that has been seen, when it's not completely dark outside, the observer say they saw something, they call it a black object, which these lights was onto.
I think I have a
And
clip of that. May I
yeah,
show? This
yeah,
is one
yeah,
we discussed
yes,
from 2001, I
yep,
think. So
yes,
let me just start this properly at the proper speed. So we have a proper playback speed here. Are you seeing this? Am I showing this here properly? Let me just see. Yeah, okay. Let me hit go. This is from a. I did the edits on this myself, not very well. This is from a YouTube clip that you are a part of, and they were interviewing a gentleman who took the following video, and then there's a quick recreation that follows. So I'm just watching. This is the video.
yep,
And is this the type of thing you're talking about? I assume.
yes. You see two or three lights onto
Yes.
something and they're moving all together.
Now, he describes this type of a thing also.
That was another thing. That's another story where
I'm
they
gonna go.
saw three
Oh, I see.
lights moving in that what you just show on this reconstruction.
Yes.
Uh, and these three lights was not connected to one object.
Right.
Uh, yeah,
I just wanted to show it because your assistant sent me the clip. I thought that's actually a really interesting clip. So I wanted to find a way to get that in there. But can you describe that whole story from that particular man, that witness? Because I didn't
yeah,
understand the Norwegian, couldn't speak Norse,
yes,
and I couldn't really get it. What was he
yeah.
describing?
Well, three of them took their snow scooters, went out to the mountains because many people have seen the lights behind one of the hills or the mountains up there.
Hmm.
So they decided to go there to see it if there was something really thing happening uh, on the other side of this mountain, and that is wilderness and not any houses at all. So when I was standing there looking in the nearby valley, not Hessdalen, but the valley to the west,
Hmm.
they saw tree lights which behave similar as the reconstruction you saw.
Hmm.
He made, if I remember correctly, what he said. I'm not sure if I remember all the details, but there were three lights though, and the one in the middle, it suddenly went up, um, and the two other one was standing still, and
Hmm.
then another light was coming down to the location between those two lights. So your reconstruction was quite good. However, based on the story he was telling, he uh, told it was a strong light. So in your reconstruction, how strong it was looking for like a little bit weak light, but
Uh-huh. So much
his
stronger.
his impression was it was a very strong light, or three actually, three
And
lights.
this was this. I just want to be clear. That was in Hessdalen or very close to Hessdalen when he saw
It
this.
was, yes,
Yeah.
those three local inhabitants. Uh, well, the people up there have seen many lights in the Hessdalen Valley itself, but also several had described that it was on the other side of the mountain. They can see the light going down or coming up from the other side of the mountains. So those three wanted to see if there was any high activity on the other side of this mountain.
Okay.
And just by they decided to, well, let's go out there and have a look.
Hmm.
And they did. And while I was standing there, they saw uh, these three lights moving like that.
On
And
the other side of the mountain from
yes,
Hessdalen. I
yes.
see. Yeah. And, I
So
get the idea that there are quite a few. I mean, Hessdalen is a small village, but one gets the idea that there are quite a few people there who have seen things, and perhaps they're not that excited about publicizing things that they have seen. You were mentioning alleged alien encounters or other intense things. Can you describe any of those witness accounts that you have
yes.
encountered?
Well, first of all, I must say that these alien descriptions, which we have only a couple of, or three, in fact, uh, they started to happen only a couple of years ago. So no one stories like that
Mm.
from the old 1980s. But it's interesting that the people up there, they started to tell about it, talked with journalists and so on. And several journalists wrote about it, reports in radio, television, and so on. But always at that time, there was making a little bit ridicule. The people up there, they felt there was ridicule to it. They
Hmm.
actually didn't. It was written in a sense that this is nonsense in a way. Well, anyway, they didn't feel that they was taken seriously,
I see.
and they actually stopped telling about their sightings. Um, well, the activity itself went on for some few years back from 81 to 84, but after 84, the activity had gone down, not from 20 a week, but to 20 a year. I'm sorry.
From 20 a week to 20 a year, you're saying?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
So very much lower activity, and we believe that it has completely stopped, not any sighting at all.
Hmm.
Uh, but I managed to go up there after some years. I have a presentation for the local people up there, and then some said that it still continues.
Yeah.
The activity continues, and I was surprised. I asked him, uh, "Well, I haven't heard about that before. Um, does it still continues?"
Yeah.
Yes, it still continues, he said, but we don't tell it anymore because we were so much ridiculed the first time, and we don't want that to happen again.
Right. I had the impression, I mean, many years ago when I started researching the subject of UFOs, I had the same impression that the Hessdalen phenomenon was really something from the early 1980s, and then essentially died out. And then to my surprise, this is a number of years ago, I became aware, just as you're describing, oh no, there it still goes on. But I was never sure to what level of intensity and so forth. But obviously it continues. And are you able to describe any of these other witnesses, or like what are do people still come to you
Yes,
now? And
yeah, people
what do
are
they tell
still
you?
coming up there, uh, and also people are coming up there to see the nature, the mountains, the lakes. Uh, it's very nice looking. They bring often their cameras and take
Mhm.
nice picture of the mountains and the lakes and everything.
Yeah.
Uh, what some of those have managed to capture. some strange light phenomena onto the pictures. So they didn't see it for themselves when they took the picture.
Mhm.
They took the picture from the nature, but when they studied the pictures afterwards, they saw on some of them, they take, of course, many pictures of the nature, but on some few pictures, they managed to get something. And that something is quite new. Well, I
Mhm.
think the first one was told back in 2016, I think. It was the first thing.
Mm.
And it happened in the daytime. And if you look at the shape and form, it is strange. On one picture, you can see some kind which look like a cube, and the sun is up. The sun was from the right side on the picture.
Mhm.
And what's strange, the cube has its darkest side the, towards the sun. So you
Oh,
should yes.
yeah, that's
And that
interesting.
has also described has been described with one other inhabitants up there. He noticed this was also during the daytime, when the sun was up, and he saw this um, what they called a light, cylindric light moving in the valley, and he noticed that the brightest part of this light was not towards the sun, but it was on the backside where there was no sunlight.
Yeah,
So that that is something he
quite interesting.
noticed.
You know,
So
if this were happening in the United States, I guarantee many people would say, well, maybe there's a military operation going on and they're experimenting with some technology. Now, Norway has a very advanced military. Norway does have a lot of very sophisticated scientific military infrastructure. But is there any speculation that what is happening in Hessdalen has something to do with the Norwegian military, or maybe even in collaboration with the United States military? Has this ever come up as a possibility?
well, the military, we cooperated with the military
Mm,
during the first two fieldworks,
yeah.
and they helped us with different kind of instruments. They helped us with giving us their observation on their radar, etc. So they helped us a lot. They wanted to find or help us to find a solution because they was very curious themselves. On one occasion, one on the Air Force told that they had seen things on their radar which they couldn't explain by ordinary means. And so they followed us and was very interested.
Mm.
Could also mention that they cooperated with the American uh, military, and I got the impression that their interest was also quite
Oh,
big.
that's interesting. Well, also that's very interesting. And am I right in assuming that is like if there were some kind of base in that area, it would be would it be easy to conceal that fact? I would think people would know eventually that there is a significant Norwegian military presence there if that were the
Yeah.
case. Am I right in assuming there is no known military presence there?
Uh, well, not now, but during early 80s, it was a military facility, not so many, I think about 20, 30 kilometers away. So it's not so that far. Not there in the Air Force, so they
What, like the army, or is there a navy?
yeah,
Not a navy
yes,
person, army.
no, yeah. So of course, but as I mentioned, we have had close cooperation with the
Mhm.
military.
Yeah.
So I would guess that, and also so the type of sightings, it couldn't be described as a military operation.
I wouldn't think so either. I just wanted to find out if your team had sort of ruled that out and thought this does not appear to be military, and that's essentially what you're saying, I gather. You don't
Yeah,
think that it's military.
absolutely most of it,
Yeah.
we'll say. A couple of which are more a couple of stories which are a little bit unsure. We haven't discussed with that with the military. For instance, you have some kind of flying thing down in the valley where people have seen it in the daytime, close by the river. Some kind of drone without any sound, though. No wings, no, but it's on cylindrical, some kind of object. They described it as a drone. Was some kind, looked like it was flying close to the river, and
I
some
know that
kind of
there,
object.
correct me here, but I believe that there were sightings of similar objects described as craft, even back in the 1980s. Is that true? Like
Yes,
they're not all lights. Some of them were seen by people as actual like physical objects.
yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
We have some of those stories, or several. But I mentioned that these are very difficult to measure. It's very difficult to bring instruments up there whilst such objects is
Yeah.
showing up, because we never know when they show up, etc.
Exactly.
But there are stories, yes, absolutely.
So in the time we have remaining for this this interview, I wonder if you can just tell one or two stories that people have given you about alien encounters, unless you think that it's totally unrelated and not worth telling. If you don't think that it has any bearing on it, we
Well,
can skip it. But if you think it might be interesting, I wonder if we want to look at that angle at all.
well, I'm not sure if it's interesting enough. Well, it's interesting for the thing,
Hmm.
but if that should be connected to the light phenomena itself, it's a little bit. I'm not sure.
No, we don't have to.
But of course, I
I mean,
have
it's just you have
couple of
people in
stories.
Hessdalen. You have people in Hessdalen who are telling you about apparent alien encounters. If I'm not
It was
mistaken.
not. It was visitors from in Hesdalen, not
Yeah.
not the local inhabitants. And
Oh,
as I
okay.
mentioned, it's only a couple of stories
I see.
which happened. And well, I can say it was the observer saw it as something. It was in nighttime. It was dark outside,
Mhm.
but he saw these figures. He described it as some kind of floating. He didn't see it was walking like physical thing. It was more like close to non-physical, but it was
Mhm.
physical in the sense that he saw it very well.
Yes.
And it moved across the street. Actually, I should mention that all the stories I've got in is written on my website. So on even that story, um, because I bring most of the stories people tell, even if it's quite different, it doesn't necessarily be part of the Hessdalen phenomena, which we call it as well. But people can go to my website and look at the observations and read what the people tell about their
I'm looking
observation.
at that. I think I'm looking at Erling-Strand.no, which is
It's
a
no,
Norwegian.
it's not that. That's my private
So
website.
sorry. Yes.
If you look at www.hessdalen.org,
Yes. Okay.
so
I'll have
if
that
you have
linked.
seen with two S, hessdalen.org.
Yes.
If you find that, you can have an English and a Norwegian page, and the English one I presume most will look at, and there you find the different stories.
Well, it's very interesting phenomenon, and I don't know if there's any new results or research that you or your colleagues engage in. I would personally love to know about it. I think it's an interesting phenomenon, and it's one of these things that make UFOs particularly engaging to me because it's one of the most elusive of all ongoing events that I can think of in this entire subject.
Yes.
And it doesn't allow for an easy alien answer or an easy geophysical answer or a military answer. It really does seem to be quite elusive, no matter how you look at it.
Yes,
You know?
and it's have many different phases, or if you can call it that, many different appearances, many different behavior, and sometimes it looks or measures. Could it be some kind of heat, or is it cold? Some instruments tell that it's probably look like to be something hot, but other stories tells it's cold. So you have some data which point in different directions. We have also something which could indicate a solid object. It could be even invisible. We could follow it on a radar screen, which radar capture planes and everything like that. We could follow it on the radar screen, the light, and also when it was not any light. So it was moving, something present, which was not seen by
Something
the
not visible
observers.
that gave a radar signature? Is that
Yeah,
what you're saying?
yes,
Wow.
that's right.
How large is how many people are investigating this with you currently? Are you doing this alone, or do you have a nice team working with you?
It's up and down. We had back in 1980, it was 5 people here, together with a whole group of those who participated in the field work, which was 40 people. Now it's sometimes it has been mostly me, but now we have a team. We have made a new team now because we want to rebuild the automatic station with the cameras and so on, and bring much more sophisticated instruments into it. This has been very little money before, so the instruments, the camera, etc., could have been much better. We hope to do that now.
Well, it seems to
And we
me
have a group.
there's tremendous potential for scientific knowledge here. I mean, this is
Yes.
a really baffling phenomenon, and one would think that there is something important to be learned here from a sophisticated study of it.
Yes, absolutely. It's strange it has been so little study on it.
The UFO stigma has obviously inhibited other scientists from getting involved, I would think. I think they're just afraid to be associated with something like UFOs. But
yes, so
boy, this is an interesting thing.
I must say that we in the beginning when we started the project, we called it UFO. When I talked with the scientists on different from the military and everywhere, they reacted when I wanted to have them with me in studying the UFO in Hessdalen. That was not.
Right.
So we decided to change the name to the Hessdalen phenomena, and then it became much more easy to
Yeah.
discuss this with
Right.
scientists.
Right.
And also, I noticed that most of the scientists I talked with in that early stage, many was very interesting personally in that topic. They wanted to do study, but they was a little bit afraid of making this public because there was scientists, and at that time, no scientist should ever study UFO. So I knew if I could make this um, the phenomena real, understand that this is a real phenomena,
Yes.
and prove it that it exists, it will be more easy for scientists to involve. And we have done that. We have managed to get scientists from abroad to help us in period of times. We have scientists from Italy, from France, and several different institutions abroad which has helped us. In sum, if you summarize all the people who has been doing research in the field, is quite many.
Very nice.
It's
Good.
not me alone.
That is hopeful. No, you don't want to be the only one doing this for your whole
No,
life.
no,
We all need
no.
help,
Yeah,
particularly something this difficult, this
yes,
elusive.
yes. But I'm very glad now because I mentioned this new team, which are taking active part in rebuilding this blue box and go more active into it.
Very
We
good.
have scientists from Germany, from Italy, and uh, yeah, that's Norway, of course. So I'm
Great.
very clever people. So I think we managed to go.
Before we end this interview here, Dr. Strand, are you aware of any other regions in the world where we can say there's something comparable? There have been a few places. There's in Texas, there was a place, a thing called the Marfa Lights, as I recall, from many years ago. I don't know if that continues. I don't know if there's any other situation, though, where you have a kind of ongoing mysterious light phenomena. There's none that's coming to my mind offhand. Do you know of
Yeah,
any
you have
other?
brown mountains in the States also. That's famous as well as Marfa though. Maybe Marfa is mostly the most famous thing.
Yeah.
But you have several other locations around the world with similar activity in the way that similar many observations.
Hmm.
Not so many where they are doing research
Right.
instruments on the field. That's very little.
Yeah.
But for instance, in Mexico, you have and South America, there are several places in the mountains. Australia. On one occasion, I was invited to do research in Australia on a similar type of light out
Uh-huh.
in the outback Australia. Brought some instruments with me, got some interesting results, and the type of light which we saw during the time, those days, 11 days we were there at location,
Hmm.
uh, it looked much like the same type of lights which was seen in Hessdalen. So I
Uh-huh.
believe the phenomena itself, with the lights, mostly lights though, but also other types objects in the daytime sometimes. Uh, these type of phenomena shows up on some certain places around the globe, in fact.
Well, it seems to me we just need to collect our data here. All the locations, the types of sightings found, the distinctive things about each of these locations, and hopefully one day we can tie this together and find some patterns, and perhaps that will help to figure out what
Yes.
this is. If it's a natural phenomenon? It's one very interesting type of natural phenomenon. There's no question. Which sometimes it does seem that it's intelligent. You say most of the time it isn't, but sometimes if it seems intelligent, that's still significant. There's just so many questions here. So many, so fascinating.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's, I would tell people who have the opportunity to go and study this phenomena. It's very, very exciting.
Well, what I would like to do is I'll have links below on this video for people to see the relevant sites. I have one here, which is part of Erling-Strand.no, but it's the index of the Hessdalen media. And I can have that linked so that people can look at the photographs, if that's okay. And there's a few videos as well. I think a couple of them. And then also, as you mentioned, Hessdalen.org, correct?
Yeah, that's the main website of the Hessdalen.
Yes, definitely. We'll have that
project.
below. I would encourage people to visit it. I have been to that site as well, and I know it's very interesting. You've got a lot of the fundamental information there about Hessdalen, so I would encourage people to look at that. Are there any other? Is there a way for people to contact you if they want to reach out and talk to you? Is there a link in any of those, or is there some other way?
Yes, you can, of course, if they visit my website, they will see some contact information there.
I will have that linked below.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Strand, thank you for this discussion of the Hessdalen lights phenomenon. It's absolutely amazing. I'm glad that we were able to do this. I think I just feel this is one of those ongoing UFO hotspots that people really ought to know about, and I'm glad we got to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for listening here with us. I will be back soon. In the meantime, if you like this video, then hit the like button. If you want to get notifications, please do that. Subscribe to my channel. You can go see what I'm doing as well over at richarddolanmembers.com. I do most of my work over there. And that's it. I want to thank everyone. See you next time. Let us keep fighting the good fight.